Welcome back, folks, for a new episode of Leaked. Now, I've been fortunate enough to be invited for the Sandbox client. I've been on there for about 4 hours. I recorded myself being tilted for about 1 hour, and I'll post that video up soon, but it's mostly me ranting and cussing and cursing like a sailor. So, the Sandbox is full of crap, but today's vehicle is kinda like that. It is the VK6501H. This is going to be a premium tier 5 German heavy tank. Now, if you already went up the German heavy tank line or the medium tank line, you already know the VK3001H or the Deutsche Birchwagen number 2 at tier 4. So both vehicles are meh heavy tanks. They're not really heavy tanks, they're slow mediums without armor. So I call the Deutsche Birchwagen the douchewagon, and this vehicle is basically the ultimate dingus wagon, the ultimate douche wagon. So yeah, the armor is okay for same tier, but if you are in a tier 7 matchup, it's not going to be a fun time. So here's a little history about the VK6501H. This vehicle was developed alongside with the VK3001H, so it's like a cousin. It's a heavier cousin with a little bit more armor. And this vehicle was intended to be a super heavy breakthrough tank. So this tank was developed pre-invasion of France. So pre-invasion of France, way before the invasion of Russia. So it was developed in the early 1938s. So this tank was coincided with the VK3001H as a replacement for the Panzer IV. But it turns out the Panzer IV was pretty good. And the weight of this vehicle means that this tank will be super difficult to transport by rails. It will have a lot of problems with the roads and the bridges in France, so they scrapped this vehicle. And in 1941, after the invasion of Russia, the Germans faced the legendary T-34s and the KV-1s and went, yeah, this tank is not gonna survive a T-34, 85 or KV-1s. Just not even the T-34-76. So nope, this tank was quickly scrapped in favor of the VK4501H, which is the Tiger 1 project. So this tank is long forgotten, and like the VK3001H, it's a boxy vehicle with some resemblance of a Panzer IV's turret, or early Panzer IV's, late Panzer III's turret on it. So, yep. But here is the timeline. So initially, Henschel developed the Deutsche Birchwagen as a replacement or somewhat another candidate for the Blitzkrieg. Later came the VK3001H and 6501H. So it was scrapped because the Panzer IV was pretty good and the weight of the 6501H was too heavy for the Germans. They just want a 30-ton tank rather than a 65-ton tank. Later came the VK3601H was drawn up, scrapped due to the difficulties with the main armament. They want to put a lot of guns on it, like the 75mm L40, later the Konish, and the 88mm KWK-36 L56. But you have to change the turret around, lots of, upgrades and modifications became difficult. And when they invade Russia, the Germans were like, oh god, the T-34s and the KV-1s. Oops. So the whole tank series from the VK30 series were scrapped. So as you can see, afterwards, Henschel and Porsche competed for a contract to build a 45-ton tank to mount the 88mm KWK-36, the L56. So Henschel reworked the VK3601H and the Porsche reworked the VK3001P designs. So that came up with the VK4501H, which is the Tiger 1, and the Porsche version, which is the VK4501P, the Porsche Tiger. And later on came the Tiger 2s, the Tiger 3s. I'll get to it. But that's the general history from Deutsche Birchwagen, the douche wagon, towards the King Tiger. And here are the initial blueprints for the Deutsche Birchwagen, the VK3001H, the 6501H, and the 3601H. So these vehicles are the pre-Tiger stage leading up to the development of the boxy tank you know as the VK4501H. But as you can see, all these vehicles were mostly blueprints, and they only built the hull, the chassis. So the turret became a problem. Fitting a good system of weapons towards this turret was difficult, so they never did it. They only built the chassis and used it as a armored transporting vehicle, and that was pretty much it. And fun fact, they turned the VK3001H hull into the 128mm Sonderschwagerstelle of VK3001H, which is the Stug IV, the tier 7 tank destroyer with only like 12 rounds. But fun fact, so the VK6501H is the long forgotten heavy brother for the VK3001H. It's quickly forgotten because it was too heavy and the Panzer IVs were pretty good, and by the time the Germans invaded Russia, this tank was quickly out of favor with the 75mm L24, which was the short barrel crap gun that you have on the Deutschbergwagen, which was super crap, so they need a heavier tank. So the VK3601H is a modification of the 3001H with a different turret. They want to fit the 75mm L40 or even longer guns like the Konish onto this vehicle and the 88mm L56. But they only developed the hull, I believe, so And that's all the pre-Tiger vehicles, but as you can see, it all shapes up for the square boxiness of the Tiger 1. Later on, Henshaw developed the Tiger 1 prototypes, one with the 75mm KWK L60 and the L70, and one with the 88mm KWK 36 L56. So here you can see, this is the resemblance with the VK3601H turret with the 75mm. And here is the production model of the Tiger 1, the VK4501H. And later on, with the strength or success of the Tiger 1, Henshaw wanted an upgrade for the Tiger 1 to carry the longer barrel 88mm KWK 43 L71, the historically accurate gun, on the Tiger 2. So here you can see it's a longer barrel gun on the Tiger 1, but they never produced it. Now there were a few modifications for the Tiger 1, like modifying the compartments, the fuel tanks, the engine compartments, and shifting stuff around. Some suggest there were sloping of the Tiger 1 to resemblance of something like a sloped Tiger 1, like a Tiger 2-ish with the Tiger 1's turret, and they called it the VK4502H. So the 4502H is actually a modification, an upgrade for the Tiger 1, if you're wondering. But then came the VK4503H Tiger 2 and Tiger 3. So the VK4503H Tiger 2 is the current Tier 7 premium German heavy tank. The VK4503H Tiger 3, that's actually renamed into the Tiger 2. So small fun fact, but there are two versions of the VK4503. So in the game you have this version. This is a rare picture, and you can tell the difference between the premium tier 7 with the Tiger 2 is because the premium version has less armor, but you cannot tell that from the picture, and the lack of a radio man's machine gun port, the ball mounted machine gun port you see right here. So there's none of that. So this is actually the early version of the VK4503H Tiger 2. The actual Tiger 2 is called the VK4503H Tiger 3. Alright, make sure you get that. But the early production model of the King Tiger has the VK4502P's turret, the push turret from the other line, if you will. So here is the shot trap, the roundedness of the turret. And increase the armor on the front with the radio man ball mounted machine gun port. So Hitler wanted more armor, the machine gun ports, and there you go. That's the early models, production models of the King Tiger. Later on, they added the Henshaw turret, but both turrets are made by Krupp, so just not really by Henshaw or Porsche. It's both made by Krupp, but this is the Henshaw turret, so it's even thicker with the flatness, no shot trap of it. Yeah, that's history. And later on, they want to upgrade the Tiger 2 with the 105mm, but it was only a prototype. So in the game, the elite Tiger 2 does not really exist in real life. It only had the 88mm 71. So there you go, folks. From Birch wagons, the douche wagons, towards the King Tiger. That's all the history. And later on is the E series, I cannot pronounce the name, the E75s and E100, the Entschworth, blah. My German sucks, but that's history for another time. So let's move on to the in-game models for the VK6501H. And here is the boxiness of it. Now what is interesting about this vehicle is the driver position and the radio operator's position are different than normal vehicles for the Germans, because you had the Germans with the machine gun port right here and the driver view slot right here. So they're driving on the left hand side and shooting on the right hand side. Whereas for this vehicle, it's flipped, like the British. Odd. That's really weird. You see British Cromwells? They have the drivers on the right hand side of the vehicle, or the starboard side of the vehicle, and the machine gun port on the left hand side, the port side. So this is like British vehicles for some reason, unless this is the driver position and this is the radio operator position, which I really doubt, because machine gun port and driver view slot. So that's really interesting. They shifted the normal driving positions of the Germans for this vehicle? I doubt it. But as you can see, this vehicle looks like a longer version of the VK3001H, or the Birch wagon, so ugh. The turret is an early version of the Panzer IV's turret with 80mm of armor all the way around. Yeah, it's nothing exciting. It's super boxy with machine gun boobs, or a Pringles can of machine guns at the front. But it has a 75mm L40, I believe. So one of the guns available for this vehicle, but they originally chosen the 75mm L24, which was the Derpy short barrel 75, which was terrible. And they had the option of using the 105mm L20, but that gun was too big for the turret, and it became super cramped. So here you can see the armor schematic with the collision models. It's 80mm of armor all the way around, so on the turret as well as the hull. The best way of angling this vehicle in the open is 45 degrees, because the side armor is the same as the frontal armor. So you have a box, and therefore if you angle it 45 degrees, that's a maximum angle of both sides. But that's only 113.14mm effective. So it's only good against tier 5 or below weapons. And that's pretty much it. So you do have a decent frontal sloped upper glacis. It's 50mm at 30 degrees. So that's about 100 millimeter effective. But yeah, that's only a small area compared to the rest of the machine gun boobs, the driver view slits. There are a lot of crevices, so you could angle it, but it's only 80mm, and any vehicles above tier 6 or just tier 6 could easily penetrate this thing. So, And here are the main stats for the VK6501H. So it's going to be a tier 5 undefined German heavy tank. It could be a special one like the Stug IV, or it could be the premium tank everybody doesn't deserve. So who knows? But it has a crew of 5, commander, loader, gunner, driver, radio operator. So like the Panzer IVs or Tiger 1s. Has normal matchmaking, I think, because all vehicles released after 9.1 or whatever has no preferential matchmaking whatsoever. So if it's going to cost gold, it's going to cost around 1,500 gold. Like the T14s or Excelsiors. Has a hit point of 700, which is pretty good, above average. 600 horsepower engine, weighs about 65 tons. Horsepower per ton ratio is 9.23, which is below average, really subpar. Top speed is a measly 20 kilometers per hour. Reverse is the same, so you go the same speed forwards and backwards. But yeah, 20 kilometers per hour top speed is pretty slow. It's like even worse than a Churchill 1. Don't quote me on it, but I think that's kind of correct, if I recall correctly. But yeah, that's pretty slow. Hull traverse is 30 degrees per second. Turret traverse is 25 degrees per second. So good on the hull traverse, slow on the turret traverse, but it's alright. Terrain resistance is above average for hard and medium, but below average for soft, so don't drive into swamps or mud or rivers. View range is good, above average, 360 meters of view range. Radio range is 646, which is good. Hull armor and turret armor is 80mm all the way around, so it's uniform, but it's a box. The gun is a 75mm L40, so it's alright-ish of a gun. Now, they did not give the ammo count, but based on the size and based on comparison with the VK3001H with the same caliber, it should carry around 60 shells. So the minimum is 40, but I'm guessing around 60. It fires APCR, AP, and high explosive, but I messed up the order. So AP, APCR, and high explosive. The penetration on the AP shell is rather lacking, 92mm. That's like the T14 or the Excelsior. The gold shell, the APCR, fires at 124mm of penetration. High explosive is 38. The alpha is 110, so below average. And the high explosive is 175, which is below average. Now the rate of fire, the reload, and the DPM, which is pretty good for a tier 5 heavy tank, it's 2150 DPM. That's like way better than tier 8 heavy tanks. So if you penetrate, if you hit, it's pretty good. And the accuracy is not bad. Actually, it's pretty good too, 0.36. Aim time is 1.9 seconds. And gun depression is 10 degrees, elevation is 20. So other than the penetration and the alpha, this gun performs. So is it worth it? Now, here are the final thoughts and opinions. So it's basically a boxier version of the T14 or the Excelsior. So if that's even possible, but it has good DPM, very good DPM, accuracy, aim time, gun angles, and view range, at the cost of ghastly top speed. So the top speed is 20 kilometers per hour. So and the horsepower per ton ratio is also very subpar. So going somewhere is going to be like playing water warships. So it's going to be slow. Subpar penetration, alpha, so that sucks. Gold shells couldn't compensate for the lack of pen, so 124mm. You have to spam a lot of gold shell, like the T14s, like the Excelsiors, like the KV220-2. So armor's only good against equal tier vehicles or below, and no tank destroyers. So yeah, and it should have no preferential matchmaking. So the T14 and the Excelsior has preferential matchmaking. So that's the big difference between these vehicles. But it's basically a T14 or Excelsior that has a higher rate of fire at the cost of speed dramatically. So armor is only comparable towards T14 or Excelsior, but it's mostly effective against equal tier opponents and no higher tier like tier 6 or tier 7. So yeah, the preferential matchmaking point is the main draw or drawing line for this vehicle, decision point for this vehicle. If it has preferential matchmaking, it's okay. If it doesn't, it really sucks. So is it really worth it? Well, imagine yourself in a tier 7 matchup with 20 kilometers per hour top speed, 80mm of armor, no camouflage because it's a large vehicle, very tall, and only 92mm of penetration. Nope. Unless you're top tier with this vehicle fighting against tier 3s, nope. It's not worth it. So Russian bias, all German premium heavies are not exciting. The Lurve, the low, the VK7001K is actually alright if you can get it hauled down. But other than that, the VK4503H, the current released tier 7 German heavy, is pretty much crap. Shot trap on the turret. Hull armor is garbage. So bleh. The Panzerkampfwagen B2 is alright, but that's not on sale all the time. And then you have this thing. So box tank. disgusting. Now, what is surprising about this vehicle is it kind of reminds me of the Nutzbarfahrzeug. So, this vehicle has been released in 2014 on the Super test server, but it's quickly forgotten. So, the models were made, the main armament was the Durchbruch gun, the 75mm L24, the short barrel 75. So, yeah, this tank was like a super gross tractor as a premium tier 3 heavy, I believe. But they quickly forgotten about this vehicle. So, what happened to this thing? The I can't pronounce German. The Nanebafahrzeug. Sure. So yeah, quickly forgotten, but that's how exciting these premium German heavy tanks are. So, bleh. So, lame premium German heavy tanks makes Hitler frowny face. But there you go, folks. The VK6501H, the heavier cousin for the VK3001H. The more you know, right? But these vehicles are meh, so not that exciting. And when the Germans saw the T-34s and the KV-1s, when they invade Russia, they went, holy crap, our tanks pretty suck. So that's the same feeling. But thank you guys for watching this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Erinnerst du dich noch an dein Wort, das du mir gegeben hast? Erinnerst du dich noch,